In conjunction with the Dane County Board of Supervisors Oral History Project, this podcast series addresses the personal experiences of current and former board supervisors and the social and community context of the Dane County Board throughout the past 50 years. Each podcast in this series highlights a central theme that emerged in the interviews conducted for the Oral History Project. This podcast is a chronological overview of the state of criminal justice policy in Dane County. David Clarenbach was elected to the Dane County Board of Supervisors in 1972 at the age of 18 and served until 1975. Born and raised in Wisconsin, Clarenbach got involved in social reform movements at an early age. For Clarenbach, his assignment to the Dane County Public Protection and Judiciary Committee provided him a platform to challenge local criminal justice policy and procedure.
The importance of the Public Protection Committee and the jurisdiction it held over the Sheriff's Department was important because during this anti-war period of the late 1960s, there were, not unlike our situation today, a lot of mass demonstrations in Madison, and there were riots. Some of us felt they were police riots, not unlike the police riot that took place during the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The Sheriff's Department in particular were known as very violent, club-happy, tear gas shooting, nightsticks wielding, vehicles of the so-called criminal justice system. That committee assignment, little did the powers that be on the board realize it, gave me a vehicle to raise some of these questions about the conduct of the Sheriff's Department, and in particular the leadership. The elected sheriff at that time was Jack Leslie, Leslie, and he was a real law and order cop, and crack their heads, control and dominate. Again, the shades of things to come in today's era of the Black Lives Movement. And I used my position on that Public Protection Committee to raise the issues and expose some of the internal operations of the Sheriff's Department. And while we didn't make any headway in the process, it did shine a light on the issues of police conduct and the Sheriff's Department responsibilities, and I think helped move things into at least the 20th century in terms of police community relations. This was a time when Madison was about to be electing a new progressive mayor, Paul Soglin, in his first term, and the city of Madison was about to get a new and innovative and progressive police chief, David Cooper, UPER, who completely changed the character and the tenor of police community relations. And so it was important that the Sheriff's Department have the same kind of scrutiny.
Mike Blaska was elected to the Dane County Board of Supervisors in 1986 and served until 2004. He served 4 of his 18 years on the board as board chair. The City-County Building Jail opened in 1954. In the mid-1980s, the board was faced with addressing overcrowding issues. Ultimately, 4 floors were added to the west half of the City-County building. Floors 6 and 7 were considered added jail space. Blaska discusses the importance of voting with one's conscience in relation to the jail expansion vote on the board.
I firmly believe that you have to do what you think is best. I'm the one that goes to all the meetings and listening to all the facts, and that's why I was never a big fan of referendums, because you put something on the ballot, and are you for or against this? Or are you for a new jail? Well, who wants a new jail? Who wants to pay for that? But if you know all the facts, they need the money. I voted my conscience, and you have to see the big picture. When we built the Dane County Jail, so we had this committee, and we looked at all the different sites. So we had only one site. Well, then we built that jail 4 stories for $19 million. It was designed for 2 more stories. I said, let's build the 2 more stories. Well, the crane is going to be there. It doesn't cost that much to do 2 more floors. And I remember the public works director says, well, he says, no, you don't build extra floors for space you don't need. He said, nobody does that. And I said, well, I think you're wrong about that. Oh, I said, let's put those 2 floors on while the cranes are there. You don't have to finish it off for jail cells. We can do that later. We'll use it for office space. We'll rent it out or storage. Let's put the 2 floors on. Our United States Senator now, who is on the county board, this was a 400-bed facility, 4 stories. I wanted to add 2 more stories on. She came in and argued that it was too big, that we had to go to a 200-bed facility because if we build 400 beds, the judges will just fill it up. And they've been talking now for the last 10 years about adding on the jail. I think the last, they wanted to put 4 stories on it. Well, it won't hold 4, but we designed it for 2 more. I mean, if only we would have had the foresight to look at the future and look at the money that we're spending today, and we just added those 2 floors for it had been little or nothing.
Tom Clotter was elected to the Dane County Board of Supervisors in 1992 and served until 2002. In addition to serving on the board, Clotter worked as a police officer for the City of Fitchburg Police Department. Clotter discusses his thoughts on the jail expansion decision.
When I served on the county board, the sheriff at the time, Rick Ramish, and we were in the process of building a new jail. And when I say that, I'm talking about the jail that is presently used on the corner, because they were taking the old jail and only using it for certain things, and we were building a new jail. And so that jail, and I always like to tell people, the jail, you have to remember too, is for the whole county. So if an officer arrested somebody in McFarland or Monona or Sun Prairie or Middleton, that officer would take the party arrested to the Dane County Jail. They don't have jails in these cities. Fitchburg too. We have a holding cell, but it's not a jail, because to have a jail you have to have medical for the individual, and you have to have food processing for the individual. And obviously we don't have that. The jail was put up with the idea of X amount of floors, and then we would add 4 floors on top of that. And it's interesting, at the time I brought up that we should do them all at the same time, and then don't finish them. In other words, you'd go in and just be an open space, right? It would just be open. Why it did that is because it was a lot easier to do the mortar and the bricks at the time it was built than to come back and do it later. What the situation was, I know it pretty well. They were to take down the elevator shaft, and then that's how they would get the crane in to put the rest of the floors on this jail. You start with the old jail we had, and it was just outdated. It was, there was problems with the cells. There was problems with people in, it was just not updated. And then we moved to the new jail, and obviously there was plans, construction, who's going to build it, how much time will it take, where do we put people in the meantime. There was just a lot of citizens' input.
Scott McDonald was elected to the Dane County Board of Supervisors in 1996 and served until 2013. He served 8 of his 17 years on the board as board chair. McDonald discusses a 2013 audit of Dane County's criminal justice system. In addition to sharing the audit's findings, McDonald expresses the challenges he experienced with criminal justice reform at the county level.
You know, there are bigger issues, as other big issues, and one of them was, you know, we were transporting 200-300 inmates a day out of the county and housing them in other jails. And several county board members, this was just a huge expense and hard on the families because then they're not nearby. And we decided that we really need to do an audit of our criminal justice system to see what the problems were from beginning to end. And the county executive was very much against it. And I just told her, look, we're doing it, and I think you just need to get on board. And the key was selecting a good consultant, which we did. Alan Kalmanoff out of California, out of Berkeley. And he really did an amazing job going from the beginning to the end, pointing out lots of problems in our system. So one of the things he discovered was that some of our judges, particularly our Madison Municipal Judge, was sentencing a lot of people to the jail for fines that they hadn't paid. And we had created kind of a debtor's prison. Another thing was that the classification of our inmates was too severe, too strict, based on national standards. So some people were being held in jail who could go out on electronic monitoring, at least any other community in the country. And that is just the tip of the iceberg of a lot of issues that they found. And so then once we got that, we were able to implement a lot of changes with the help of the sheriff and to a lesser degree the judges. And the DA was helpful. And our jail population went from 1,200 to 850. We took in, everyone came in from out of the county, came back. People who were just sitting in jail for no reason, losing their job. That went away, not completely, but a lot of it. And millions of dollars a year that we could spend on something more productive. So that was a big deal, something I was proud of. You know, the county executive was convinced that this study would say we needed expensive new jail. Well, these issues often don't go away, but we certainly put that off, and we're looking at a much lower number than we were back then of what a proper jail population for a county this size is.
Sheila Stubbs was elected to the Dane County Board of Supervisors in 2006. She currently serves on the board and Wisconsin State Assembly, representing District 77. Representative Stubbs highlights key criminal justice reform projects and policy initiatives she has played a central role in at the county level.
I think if people looked at Sheila Stubbs, they would say Sheila Stubbs believes in criminal justice reform, because I don't just say it, I do it. And that's a part of it. I have always said at a podium and said, less talk, more action. A very difficult vote that I've had was this jail vote. That was a very hard decision to build a new jail. It was the hardest decision I had. But one of the things I stood up and said, we need a smaller, safer jail, because it is so degrading to have people upstairs above us in a 1950-year jail. It is the worst and oldest jail in the country. And they're sitting in the section where they're first locked up and can't even get into a place to take a shower because of the way our jail is. And so I've been very vocal, like, we can't have people live like that. People probably will remember I said smaller, safer jail, which we closed a Huber facility. I forced them to close a Huber facility of 200 some people to make sure that our jail that we're building will be smaller and safer and look at alternatives. I truly began to think about who are the populations we're missing as we think about census, as we think about elections. Every election matters, not just presidential. So I think that there are people incarcerated in our jails, don't have the education, don't have the tool. They don't know who to vote for. Our sheriffs can't tell them who to vote for. Our sheriffs can't not be in uniform and educate them. So I put some dollars in our budget to allow us to hire a part-time person to do just that. Educate people getting released from jail, if they're in our jails at any point, about who these candidates are and what steps we go through to make sure we get their absentee ballots. And if they're getting released and they have a residence, let's make sure that they are in alignment from there, because their votes do matter. I think I build good relationships with criminal justice partners. So our sheriff, our judges, the county executive, the district attorney. I think another stellar item that I worked on was creating the community restorative court. It's the only one in the world, internationally, that was created without a judge. One of the things I could say I thought about as we created this is when people of color or African Americans go to court, what does the jury look like? How often do you have somebody on the jury that looks like you, that understands your history and can relate to what you're saying? And so I thought the best way to deal with issues is to have the peers look like the people that are in the community who's going to hold them accountable. It's speaking from a victim's voice, which is harder in the criminal justice system. You don't always hear the victim's voice. But this project allows the victims to have a voice and the offenders, all the participants, to be able, we hold them accountable as we repair the harm that they've created in the community. But then this community restorative court focuses on the underlying issues that led them to commit the crime that they did, holding them accountable, creating a restorative court agreement, doing the agreement, getting them through a system that could take a year or so later, within 6 to 9 months. Here's the beauty, here's the nugget of this community restorative court. When you complete the court, you do not get an entry on the CCAP system. That is life-changing. And I can say we've utilized the community restorative court here in Dane County with a lot of race-related issues.
For more information about the policies and projects referenced in this podcast, please check out the Oral History Project report located on the Dane County website.